Every day, sometimes without realizing it, we make decision after decision. Some of these are fairly innocuous. Should I take Oak Street or Granville Street to the airport? But a lot of them have to do with our goals for ourselves, whether it's about projects that we want to complete, things we want to get done, or what we'll be satisfied to have done in the future. And some of these are ethical decisions. What should I do with this wallet stuffed with money that I just found? If you imagine these kinds of situations, it often seems easy, but when you're right there in the moment, it's harder to decide. Should I do this or that? I don't know. 10 or 15 years ago, there was something of a fad in the Christian community to wear plastic bracelets with the letters WWJD on them. This stands for What Would Jesus Do? Now, I am not at all a religious person, but I actually think this was a pretty good idea. When we make decisions, we usually have some old habits or temptations or faulty ideas or impulses pushing us one way or another, and these can make us do things that we'll regret later on. It helps to pull up out of those impulses and look more at our aspirations than our temptations. One way of doing that is to think of an honorable person who lives up to our ideals and ask what decision they'd make in a similar situation. If you're Christian, Jesus seems like the obvious choice. Oh, he'd probably donate more to charity. Oh, he'd let this person onto the on-ramp without honking like an idiot. But if you're not Christian, you can still use it. You can think of somebody you admire. Maybe it's a great friend. Maybe it's someone like Gandhi. Maybe a mentor of yours. And think about what they'd do. What would Mark do? What would Leanne do in this situation? The answer you get will be based on your values, because you won't be swayed by whatever Leanne's particular temptations are. And secretly, maybe you're wrong. Maybe Nelson Mandela would take the last popsicle out of the fridge. But imagining what your image of him would do might give you a better answer. When I'm doing therapy, I'm often talking to people who are faced with these kinds of decisions, and it's hard in the moment to make the choice. Sometimes they've tended to do one thing for a long while, and that hasn't worked out so well. Like if they get anxious, they leave the grocery store. And as a result, their fear of grocery stores is only getting worse and worse and worse. So they need something to help with that decision, and this can work. What would your brave friend Rita do if she got anxious in that store? Well, she'd probably laugh at herself and say, well, tough luck, I need groceries. Oh, I could do that. So having that good model can be a help. But there's something I recommend even more often. Forget Gandhi. Forget Nelson Mandela. Forget Jesus. Forget your friend Ivan. What about you? Specifically, what about the best version of you? What would she do? What would he do? You want to be a successful student. Okay, what would you, the successful student, be doing right now? You want to be fine with grocery stores. Great. And if you were, would you do your shopping or would you leave the cart and run out? You want to be a non-drinker. So would you be going to this bar tonight? You want to be the organized person who gets this project in on time. So what would that person be doing to get there? You'd like to be the really valued friend or partner. So what would your great friend or partner self do in this situation? In short, what would you do? Or I do. WWID. My non-depressed self. My adventurous self. My good driver self. My physically fit self. My sociable self. My responsible self. My courageous self. My non-drinking self. What would that imaginary person do? Once I have the answer, I can do that, even if I'm tempted to do something else. And by being that person, I get closer to becoming that person. If I practice not drinking long enough, even though secretly I'd love a beer, eventually my internal world comes into line and the cravings will fade. If I study, even if I'd rather switch on the TV, I become a better student. If I do what I'd do if I wasn't afraid, or if I was overcoming my fear, then my fear will gradually go away. Some Christians might say, well, you're kind of violating the idea. I don't think so. What would Jesus do? Well, he might stand up and say, I am the Son of God. That's probably not your best plan. Your ambition isn't to be him, it's to be the best person you can be according to the values of your faith. So asking, if I was actually abiding by the humility, the courageousness, and the generosity of the Christian I would like to be, what would I do? So even if you are religious, asking what the best version of you would do is probably still a workable idea. And I'd say probably the best idea. So terrific. Do I use this? Absolutely. If I've got a cherry crop to pick in the orchard, or a book that I'm supposedly writing, or clinic taxes to fill out, what do I want to do? I want to loaf about and look at the news, or read my book, or play on the computer. It's really tempting and completely unsatisfying. But sometimes my mind kind of hides what would be helpful. If I ask myself, okay, what would the best version of me be doing right now? The clouds part and it becomes obvious. I'd be finishing up those financial statements. I'd be hiking the gross grind. I'd be at the gym. I'd be writing to thank that person for having me to dinner last night. And sometimes I'd be reading a novel in the hammock instead of playing stupid Sudoku on the couch. And when I do that, my life does not become drudgery. It becomes more interesting. I get more done, I'm happier, and I'm living something closer to the life I actually want. So if I was doing what really satisfies me, or living up to who I want to be, what would I be doing right now? It helps. Maybe it'd help you too. Try it and see. You can get How to Be Miserable from your local bookseller or from Amazon. The link's below.